I've started a new channel called Lunila Tales. Please subscribe and watch my best stories there. Link is in the description. The recording began with a scream so piercing it made every person in the United Earth Council chamber stiffen. The sound was raw, human, filled with the terror of someone who had already realized they were not going home. Then came the guttural laughter of alien voices, layered, clicking, inhuman. The visual feed was shaky, the lens cracked, but the images were unmistakable. Human scouts, explorers on a peaceful mission, strapped to jagged metal frames as glowing instruments tore into their flesh. One soldier tried to sing the anthem of Earth to stay strong, his voice breaking on the third line before it dissolved into sobs. And then the recording cut off, replaced by static. For several seconds, the chamber was silent. No one spoke. No one coughed. The only sound was the steady hum of the ventilation system, carrying the stink of fear and outrage through the hall. That was the moment humanity changed. The feed leaked within hours. Social media erupted, memes sprouting faster than fact. One video showed a Croth alien image with captions like, "When you torture humans and forget they invented nukes." Others were less funny, more horrifying, replays of the scouts' final screams turned into haunting remixes that climbed the charts in hours. News anchors stammered through their scripts, pundits debated whether this meant war or diplomacy, and comedians filled their monologues with nervous jokes that only fueled the rage. Humanity, often fractured and petty, suddenly had one single thought: they tortured our people. On the streets of New Shanghai, tens of thousands gathered, holding torches, chanting for vengeance. In New York, holographic projectors lit up skyscrapers with the faces of the scouts, now martyrs, their names etched into the sky. In the African Union, leaders declared a planetary mourning period, even as scientists quietly began discussing weaponized satellite. Entire religions, normally at odds, issued a joint decree. This was an affront to creation itself, and the punishment must be extinction. The United Earth Council convened that same night. Representatives from every continent, every orbital colony, every major moon settlement were present, their faces drawn with sleepless fury. At the center of the massive chamber, the hollow table replayed the last few seconds of the transmission on loop. A general with half his face scarred from an old Martian mining accident slammed his fist on the table so hard the image flickered. "Enough watching," he growled, his voice carrying across the chamber. "They mock us. They bleed us. They think we are weak. We must show them what extinction means." The council erupted into argument. Some demanded caution. Others demanded annihilation. A senator from Europa's colony argued that extermination would make humans the monsters. She barely finished her sentence before someone shouted, "They tortured men who carried no weapons. What would you call monsters if not them?" Even the president of the council, normally calm, could not mask his fury. He whispered, almost to himself, "If we do nothing, the galaxy will believe humans are prey." Meanwhile, outside the chamber, the world boiled with opinion. Street performers dressed as alien caricatures staged mock trials where children were allowed to throw rotten fruit at the actors. Hackers flooded Croth communication networks with loops of human laughter layered with the words, "You're next." Armies of digital pranksters changed every alien translation program they could access so that the word Croth automatically translated to coward. As the debate inside the chamber dragged on, a young lieutenant, tasked only with carrying datapads, dared to speak. His voice cracked but carried. "Sir," he said, "they tortured our scouts. Not soldiers. Not even spies. Just explorers. If this is not war, then what else could it ever be?" His words hung in the air like a bell strike. The council president finally rose. The hall quieted. He spoke slowly, deliberately, as though each word carried the weight of an entire planet. "We will not retaliate," he said. A murmur spread. Some thought it was surrender, others gasped in disbelief. His voice rose like a blade cutting through steel. "We will not retaliate. We will eradicate. The Croth will be erased from history. The chamber thundered with approval. Even those who had begged for caution bowed their heads, realizing there was no other path left. The vote was cast, almost unanimous. For the first time in human history, Earth had declared a war of extinction. News of the decision swept across the globe like fire. Factories shut down their usual production lines overnight and retooled for war. Students volunteered for military service en masse, their faces shining with anger and fear. Farmers offered their land for military testing ground. Even comedians, normally the voice of dissent, declared the enemy had no sense of humor and must therefore be destroyed. One popular late-night host declared, "Remember, folks, we once spent 40 years fighting each other over oil. Imagine what we'll do to aliens who think humans are appetizers." On the alien side, the Croth did not issue apologies. Instead, they broadcast a chilling message across human channels. "We will break you all." The transmission showed them feasting on human limbs, a grotesque taunt. But their arrogance only cemented Earth's resolve. In the back rooms of laboratories, secret projects long shelved for ethical reasons were dusted off. Scientists whispered about weapons that could unravel DNA, machines that could collapse stars, and fleets of AI ships that could outthink any organic mind. Rumors spread that even ancient conspiracies like black hole bombs and planet crackers were no longer myths, but real and under construction. The world was shifting, driven by vengeance, powered by outrage. And yet, beneath the fury there was fear. Some whispered late at night, when broadcasts had ended and the chants in the streets had quieted, that this war would not just end the Croth. It might end humanity too. But those voices were drowned in the roar of unity, of bloodlust, of determination. The die was cast. It had all begun with a scream. Factories that once built cars, clothes, and coffee machines now thundered with the rhythm of war. The sound was everywhere, from the deep rumbles of orbital shipyards to the shrill whine of drones stitching together alloys meant for weapons. Humanity had declared its first war of extinction, and the mobilization was total. There were no longer nations or corporations competing for profit. There was only Earth and its colonies, united under one terrifying purpose. The mood was strange, a combination of grim determination and bizarre humor, as if the species needed to laugh in order to mask what it was about to do. In New Mumbai, an entire megacity had been converted into the Iron Forge, the largest single war production site in human history. From above, the city glowed with the orange fires of endless foundries and the gleaming lines of assembly platforms stretching toward the horizon. Every building vibrated with the pulse of construction. Civilians walked the streets in ash-stained uniforms, their hands raw from labor but their faces lit with something dangerous. In cafeterias, workers traded jokes about which alien body parts they would personally blast off first. A popular chant went, "One job, one bullet, one alien less," and it spread through factories like wildfire. What startled the Croth most, though they could not yet understand it, was the way humanity combined rage with creativity. A team of engineers in Berlin proposed a railgun so massive it required a hollowed-out asteroid to house it. A group of game designers in Seoul suggested algorithms to predict alien tactics, using decades of esports data as the foundation. Children drew crude sketches of war machines, and some of those sketches were actually taken seriously by desperate scientists. There was no separation anymore between civilian and soldier. The entire species was a war machine, a living organism of vengeance. The scientists, once held in check by endless debates and ethics committees, were unleashed. Laboratories that had been closed by treaties suddenly lit up again, doors unsealed, equipment dusted off. In Geneva, a group of geneticists announced the creation of a bioweapon that could make the Croth shed their exoskeletons like melting wax. In Tokyo, physicists proudly revealed quantum warheads capable of tearing matter apart at its smallest bond. Rival teams argued not about whether to build weapons, but what to name them. A viral debate emerged between calling one doomsday cannon the Big Pew Pew or Operation Space Hammer. The council finally settled on something more formal, but the memes persisted anyway, as humanity laughed even while preparing for genocide. Not all contributions were technical. Comedians sharpened their jokes into blades. A popular sketch on the Lunar Broadcasting Network showed a fake Croth general discovering that humans had discovered his species' only weakness: lactose intolerance. The punchline had the general begging for mercy while humans attacked with endless milk cartons. The crowd roared with laughter, but beneath the humor was a chilling truth. Humans had a gift for finding weakness, mocking it, then exploiting it without mercy. Even their jokes became a form of psychological warfare. Still, no amount of comedy erased the shadows of fear. Everyone knew the Croth were not passive. Their spies moved among human cities, their agents slipping through shadows with alien technology that cloaked them from most detection. In one terrifying incident in Sao Paulo, an entire research facility was reduced to ash when Croth saboteurs ignited an antimatter experiment. For 3 days the world mourned, until a counterintelligence strike team captured one of the infiltrators alive. Interrogations failed. Threats failed. Torture failed. The alien never broke. It was only when a young soldier offered the creature a piece of dark chocolate that something unexpected happened. The Croth's mandibles clicked curiously, it took a bite, and its entire demeanor shifted. Against every protocol, the soldier fed it more until the spy began speaking. It turned out the Croth were not a monolith. Some despised the endless wars their leaders pursued. This particular spy, sickened by what had been done to the scouts, offered information in exchange for protection. He revealed supply routes, weaknesses in Croth armor, even the location of hidden colonies. His betrayal shocked the council, but they quickly exploited it. News of the defector spread in whispers through the military, and soon in jokes across social feed. Memes showed chocolate bars floating through space with captions like, "Earth's greatest weapon." The alien's identity was kept secret, but its impact rippled across the war effort. For the first time, humans believed not just in victory, but in the possibility of completely outmaneuvering their enemy. The Council knew, however, that intelligence was only part of the equation. They needed numbers. Massive numbers. Recruitment centers overflowed with volunteers. Soldiers trained in underground bunkers, in orbiting stations, in deserts turned into live-fire arenas. Augmented suits gave them the strength to rip through steel with their bare hand. Neural links connected them to drones and tanks as if they were extensions of their bodies. Even children trained in virtual arenas, not yet old enough to fight but already learning the strategies of war. Some of the training modules were disguised as games, keeping spirits high while preparing the next generation for the worst. In the void of space, entire fleets were assembled, each larger than any human navy before. Carriers with hulls the size of cities, bristling with cannons. Dreadnoughts whose engines glowed so bright they looked like second suns. Swarms of drones moved in perfect synchrony, controlled by artificial intelligence systems with personalities sharp enough to argue with their human commanders. In one infamous test, a commander suggested a cautious flanking maneuver, and the AI replied, "That's adorable, but I'll just annihilate them instead." The clip leaked and became a viral video, comforting civilians with the idea that even their machines were bloodthirsty on their behalf. And yet, in the middle of this storm of preparation, there were quiet moments of doubt. Priests in old cathedrals whispered that humanity was stepping into the role of executioner, not defender. Poets wrote verses about vengeance hollowing the soul. But such words were drowned in the thunder of production lines, the speeches of generals, and the chants of billions who demanded retribution. Those who doubted kept their voices low, afraid of being labeled traitors, afraid of standing in the way of humanity's fury. The stage was set. Earth was no longer just a planet. It was an armory, a crucible, a forge of destruction. From the depths of its oceans to the peaks of its orbital stations, every corner of human civilization pulsed with the rhythm of war. The decision had been made and there was no turning back. The galaxy had watched humans explore, laugh, fight among themselves, dream of peace. Now it would watch them bare their teeth. And when the first fleets left orbit, armed with the terrible gifts of science and the unity of a species enraged, even the stars themselves seemed to tremble. The fleet that launched from Earth was like nothing humanity had ever unleashed before. Hundreds of ships, each the size of cities, burned their engines as they cut across the void. Their destination was Trinax, a heavily fortified frontier world belonging to the Croth. The name alone carried a stench of fear, whispered in reports as a hub of cruelty where alien warlords honed their power. Now it would become the first world to feel the weight of human vengeance. As the ships closed in, every screen aboard carried the same message: for the scouts, for humanity, for extinction. The invasion began before dawn on Trinax's surface. The first waves of human drones descended from orbit in streaks of fire, tearing through the skies like falling stars. Alien defense cannons roared back, spitting plasma that lit the heavens in green fire. Ships burst apart, raining debris across the landscape, but still the human fleet pressed forward. Marines in drop pods smashed through the atmosphere, their armored suits glowing as they hit the ground hard enough to crack the soil. Whole platoons stormed the trenches, rifles blazing, grenades hurling arcs of destruction through alien lines. The battle was chaos, thunder, and screams, but within the storm a strange grim joy pulsed. Humanity had arrived, and it would not leave until the world was ash. The first shocking discovery came within hours. In the ruins of a Croth command outpost, soldiers stumbled upon what looked like twisted sculptures scattered through a chamber lit by pulsing blue crystals. At first, they thought the aliens had built some grotesque art form, jagged metal frames adorned with flesh-like strands. But then they saw human faces. The remains of the tortured scouts had been displayed here, their bodies warped into grotesque displays. A soldier vomited on the spot, others froze in horrified silence, but one young sergeant raised his rifle and shredded the entire chamber into dust. Rage became their fuel, hotter than any firepower they carried. Word spread quickly through the troop. The chants rose again, fiercer than ever: no retreat, no prisoners, no mercy. The Croth fought savagely. Their bodies, armored in natural exoskeletons, charged with blades that extended from their arms. They swarmed in numbers, climbing over their own dead to reach human lines. Entire squads of Marines were torn apart in the melee, their blood painting the soil red. Yet for every human that fell, 10 aliens followed. Human technology and tactics combined into brutal efficiency. Flamethrowers incinerated clusters of attackers. Rail cannons split their heaviest beasts into two. Orbital strikes turned fortified bunkers into molten craters. Still, the aliens howled, refusing to yield. The battlefield became a storm of fire and bone, smoke and steel. In orbit, the larger war raged with even greater violence. Alien cruisers with jagged spines tore into the human fleet, spewing energy bolts that cracked hulls. But the dreadnoughts of Earth answered with railgun salvos so powerful they punched holes straight through enemy ship. One Croth flagship, massive and black as obsidian, rammed directly into a human carrier. Both ships detonated, a sphere of white fire expanding until the shockwave ripped through smaller vessels caught nearby. Hundreds of lives were lost in seconds, but the momentum of war did not stop. On Earth, billions watched the battle unfold on live broadcast. Every explosion, every kill, every cry of victory was turned into propaganda. Children shouted at the screens as if it were a game, but the tears in their parents' eyes told another truth. By the third day, the human flag was planted on the highest spire of Trinax's capital. The city below was a carcass of stone and metal, its towers broken, its streets running with blood both alien and human. The victory was undeniable, but so was the cost. Thousands of soldiers never returned, their bodies incinerated, their names already being engraved into memorials back on Earth. Some troops laughed in exhaustion, others collapsed where they stood, staring blankly at the devastation. A captain, grimy and bruised, tried to lighten the mood by pointing at the ruins. "At least they can't say humans don't know how to throw a party," he muttered. "We just blew up their house." The soldiers around him laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was the only thing keeping them sane. The real weapon, however, was not the victory itself but what followed. Human leaders ordered a broadcast sent across the galactic network. It was simple and direct, spoken by the council president with a calmness that chilled even those on his side. "Harm one human, and your species will cease to exist." The words repeated in every major alien tongue, leaving no room for misunderstanding. The footage from Trinax accompanied the message. Croth cities in flames, alien corpses piled high, and the desecrated human scouts finally given a burial under the alien sky. It was a threat, but also a demonstration. Humanity was no longer warning. Humanity was promising. The broadcast rippled across the galaxy like a thunderclap. On distant worlds, alien civilizations whispered in fear. Some called humanity barbaric, others called them righteous, but none dismissed them. The Croth themselves howled in outrage, broadcasting their own threats back, declaring they would not rest until Earth was ground into dust. But the footage of Trinax told a different story. For the first time, the galaxy had witnessed what humanity was capable of when unified. The extinction they promised was not just rhetoric. It was a reality unfolding before their eyes. In the aftermath of the battle, soldiers wandered the ruins, searching for survivors, scavenging what little could be saved. Some carried small trinkets from the scouts' remains back to their ships, determined to deliver them home to families waiting in grief. Others stood silently, staring at the horizon where smoke still rose, wondering if the war would ever end, or if this was only the beginning of something much darker. The battlefield was silent now, but in that silence, a new truth settled in. Humanity had taken its first step into a war that would define its destiny, a war where survival was not enough. The message was clear. The Croth had shown the galaxy how merciless they could be. Humanity had answered, and their answer was louder, bloodier, and final. The war of extinction was no longer a threat. It had begun, and there was no going back. The victory at Trinax had been a firestorm that shook the galaxy, but it was only the beginning. Humanity's triumph had come at a terrible cost, and while Earth celebrated with parades and speeches, the Croth were not idle. From the black depths of space, they struck back with fury and cunning. It began with whispers of disease. On colonies across the outer belt, miners and engineers suddenly fell ill, their bodies covered in lesions that oozed with a strange, iridescent fluid. Entire stations were quarantined, but by then it was too late. The bioplague spread like wildfire, leaping from air ducts to skin contact, from cargo shipments to water supplies. Panic gripped entire populations as people barricaded themselves in homes, terrified to breathe the same air as their neighbors. It was no accident. The Croth had weaponized biology itself, and now Earth's unity was tested in ways even bombs could not achieve. Governments rushed to reassure their people, but fear bred chaos faster than comfort. In New York, mobs stormed pharmacies demanding cures that did not exist. In Cairo, preachers declared the plague's divine punishment for vengeance. On the Martian colonies, oxygen riots broke out when shipments were delayed due to quarantine procedures. Humanity, so confident after its first victory, now trembled on the edge of despair. Soldiers who had survived Trinax returned home only to find their families coughing blood. Scientists scrambled, burning through nights to craft vaccines, but the Croth plagues shifted and adapted with horrifying speed. The world felt brittle, like glass under strain, waiting for one more blow to shatter completely. Amid the fear, politics turned poisonous. In the United Earth Council chamber, an admiral named Kessler stood and spoke words that cut through the air like blade. "We cannot win this war," he declared. "We must negotiate with the Croth before humanity is consumed." His words spread like sparks across dry grass. Some nodded grimly, desperate for peace. Others spat in disgust, branding him a coward. Kessler argued that extermination would doom not only the aliens but humanity itself. The Kroth, he claimed, were too entrenched, too vicious, too strong. His solution was a truce, a compromise to save what remained of Earth's children. But outside the chambers, Kessler's name became a curse. News feeds broadcast his speech and painted him as a traitor who would bow to monsters that tortured innocent scouts. Protesters gathered outside his residence, chanting slogans that turned cruel and mocking. Memes flooded the networks, calling him Admiral Downer, showing his face plastered over alien bodies begging for mercy. Within days, the council held a tribunal. It was quick, ruthless, and unforgiving. Kessler was stripped of rank, marched onto a stage, and executed live before billions. His final words were drowned in jeers, his body discarded as though it meant nothing. Humanity had no patience left for hesitation. They would rather burn than bow. The Kroth, however, were cunning predators. They knew humanity's rage was afire, so they set traps to fan it higher, waiting for the moment to strike. It came when Earth's grand fleet moved into the nebula of Morns, a dense cloud of charged gases that distorted sensors and scrambled communications. Scouts reported a clear path through, but as the fleet advanced, the trap was sprung. Mines hidden within the nebula ignited, each one exploding with bursts of magnetic force that tore ships apart. Destroyers vanished in silent eruptions. Cruisers spun helplessly into collision courses. Panic rippled through the fleet as commanders shouted orders that no one could hear. The nebula became a slaughterhouse, each flash of fire a grave marker in the void. For the first time since Trinax, humanity faced annihilation. The nebula glowed with burning wreckage, voices screamed over broken channels, and morale shattered as ships vanished one by one. It seemed certain the fleet would be destroyed, humanity's vengeance snuffed out before it had truly begun. Then, from the chaos came an unexpected salvation. The alien defector, the one who had once traded secrets for chocolate, had been stationed on a secondary command ship. Watching the slaughter unfold, he knew the trap too well, because he had helped design it before betraying his people. With a shuddering resolve, he demanded to be released from his restraints. The humans hesitated, but he insisted. He alone knew how to shut it down. Strapped into a makeshift interface, the alien worked with frantic precision, his mandibles clicking as he barked instructions to human engineers. Together they rerouted signals, tricking the Kroth mines into detonating prematurely or shutting down entirely. With each success, the fleet carved a narrow corridor of survival through the deadly field. But the process drained him. His body shook, his breathing faltered, and blood seeped from cracks in his exoskeleton. As the last wave of mines flickered out, the alien slumped against the console, whispering words the translators rendered simply as "forgive me." His body went still, lifeless, but his sacrifice saved the fleet from destruction. The surviving ships emerged from the nebula battered, scarred, but alive. The soldiers who had cursed the alien's presence now saluted his memory in silence. Back on Earth, his death was broadcast not as betrayal, but as redemption, proof that even among monsters there could be voices of defiance. The irony was not lost on humanity. A war built on the certainty of extinction now carried the echo of a single alien who had chosen loyalty to humans over his own kind. Still, the war dragged on. The Kroth celebrated their ambush as a victory, mocking the humans with broadcasts of their burning ship. But Earth spun the story differently. Propaganda showed the surviving fleet breaking through, emerging bloodied but unbroken, carrying the promise of vengeance deeper into enemy space. The galaxy watched with unease. The Kroth believed they had dealt a crippling blow. Humanity believed they had proven their resilience. Both sides knew the war was far from finished. In the silence after the battle, commanders reviewed the wreckage counts, the casualty lists, the endless names of the dead. Grief mingled with rage, and rage became resolve. The plagues had not broken them. Betrayal had not divided them. Ambush had not destroyed them. Humanity remained, scarred but unyielding. And as new fleets were forged, as new weapons were built, one truth became unshakable. This was not a war that would end with treaties. This was not a war that would end with surrender. The only ending was extinction, and humanity intended to be the last species standing. In the wake of the Nebula battle, humanity no longer hesitated. The Council declared that half measures were finished, hesitation was treason, and mercy was weakness. The Croth had unleashed plagues, tortured explorers, and slaughtered innocents. They would never stop unless forced into silence. That was when Project Ragnarok was revealed. For years, it had been whispered about in secure circles, dismissed by most as science fiction or madness. Now it was presented openly to the Council and to the world. Ragnarok was not a single weapon but a family of devices, capable of unraveling the biosphere of entire planets, sterilizing them down to the microbes. It was not designed to win battles. It was designed to end species. The debate over Ragnarok was fierce, but it was also short. Philosophers and ethicists tried to argue that it was genocide, that wielding such power would damn humanity forever. Their voices were drowned in a storm of anger from billions demanding vengeance. Families who had lost sons and daughters at Trinax shouted for blood. Victims of the plagues begged that no alien child be left alive to carry on the Croth name. The council chambers thundered with chants that echoed those in the streets. Never again, no survivors, extinction. And so, Ragnarok was authorized. The scientists who had worked in secret for years now stepped into the light, leading armies of engineers and soldiers who would carry their creation to the stars. The first target was Croth Prime, the alien homeworld. It was more than a planet. It was their cradle, their temple, their empire. The Croth believed it to be invincible, a place that no enemy could touch. It bristled with defenses, orbital fortresses, fleets larger than anything humanity had yet faced. To strike at it directly was madness. To annihilate it entirely was unthinkable. And yet, that was the order. Humanity would not negotiate, would not bargain, would not settle for containment. The war would end where it began, in the heart of their enemy. Preparations stretched for months, every hour filled with feverish labor. Fleets larger than those at Trinax were assembled, dreadnoughts armed with Ragnarok warheads carried in armored bays that glowed like caged suns. Soldiers drilled endlessly, knowing this would be their final march. Across Earth and her colonies, civilians waited with bated breath, their lives now bound to the outcome of a single battle. Even humor became darker, sharper. Cartoons showed Croth Prime as a piece of bread about to be shoved into Earth's toaster. Banners declared breakfast is served, Extinction style. The world laughed nervously because if they did not laugh, they would weep. When the fleet finally arrived at the edge of Croth space, the battle began before a single shot was fired. The Croth screamed defiance across the void, broadcasting their chants of eternal war. The humans responded with silence and then with fire. The largest space battle in galactic history erupted. Alien ships swarmed in countless numbers, their claws and beams tearing through human ranks. But humanity fought with a cold fury, their weapons precise, their tactics ruthless. Dreadnoughts split the void with cannons that cracked hulls like eggshells. Swarms of drones surged forward, tearing through alien formations in waves of steel. Every victory came with cost. Ships burned, soldiers screamed, and the black void became littered with wreckage that would drift for centuries. On the surface of Croth Prime, human drop forces landed in storms of flame. Armored battalions smashed into alien defenses, grinding them down with sheer brutality. Streets turned into rivers of blood, buildings collapsed in firestorms, and civilians fled in panic. Some soldiers hesitated, their rifles trembling as they saw alien families huddled in terror. But hesitation was punished quickly. Commanders barked orders. No prisoners. No survivors. The extinction decree was not a suggestion, it was absolute. And so, human blades and bullets cut down not only warriors but anyone who bore the mark of the enemy. For some soldiers it was catharsis. For others it was hell. One young Marine whispered through tears, "I came here for revenge, not for this." But the war did not allow choice. In orbit, the Ragnarok warheads were prepared. The command was given, and the weapons descended. Each one was a titan of destruction, glowing with energy that pulsed like a star bound in chains. The Kroth threw everything they had to stop them. Fleets sacrificed themselves, suicide runs slammed into carriers, desperate defenses screamed against the tide. Nothing stopped Ragnarok. The first detonation ripped through the atmosphere, unraveling the very air. Forests withered in seconds. Oceans boiled into clouds of steam. Cities crumbled into dust. Billions cried out, their voices rising together into a final chorus that echoed across the galaxy. Then silence followed, deeper and heavier than any before. On Earth, the broadcast of the detonation was watched by every living human. Crowds filled cities, their faces lit by the glow of screens. When Kroth Prime cracked and burned, they cheered. They screamed with joy, with vengeance, with triumph. For the first time, humanity felt it had avenged the tortured scouts, the plague victims, the countless dead. The war was not over, but the heart of the enemy was gone. Humanity had killed a world, and in doing so, announced itself as a power beyond comprehension. And yet, beneath the cheers, there were whispers. Soldiers who had marched through alien streets returned with haunted eyes, seeing families they had slaughtered in their dreams. Commanders who had pressed the button on Ragnarok stared at their own hands as if they had become monstrous. A senator in secret asked, "Did we win, or did we lose something greater?" But such questions were not spoken aloud for long. The official narrative drowned them out. Humanity had triumphed. Humanity had shown strength. Humanity had done what no other species dared. As the fleets gathered their dead and prepared to return, the galaxy shivered. Other civilizations sent messages of surrender before a single human ship came near. Treaties were signed without negotiation, promises of tribute and allegiance offered freely. To resist humanity now was suicide. Earth's name was spoken in awe and in terror. Some called them saviors. Others called them monsters. But all agreed on one truth. The humans had proven they could destroy not just armies, not just cities, but entire species. In the ruins of Kroth Prime, there was no sound, no life, no resistance. The world had been reduced to a scar in the stars, a tomb of dust and ash. The soldiers who stood on the blackened soil looked around in silence, unable to decide if they had witnessed victory or horror. The war had reached its climax, and humanity had emerged triumphant. But the question remained, though none dared voice it aloud. In destroying their enemy, had they also destroyed something vital within themselves? The silence that followed the destruction of Kroth Prime was unlike anything humanity had ever known. For the first time in living memory, the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. The broadcasts of Ragnarok's fire spread across every channel, every world, every colony. Civilizations that had once mocked humans now trembled, their leaders rushing to issue statements of friendship, peace, and surrender. One alien empire after another sent envoys, begging not to share the fate of the Kroth. In a matter of weeks, Earth went from being one among many voices in the stars to being the voice, the one no one dared to challenge. Humanity had not just won a war. They had remade the balance of the galaxy in fire and blood. In the great halls of Earth's council, treaties were signed daily. Alien representatives knelt before human officials, offering tribute and concessions. Some came bearing rare metals, others ships, others entire planets ceded as gift. No price was too high for survival. Human diplomats accepted these offerings with calculated calm, always reminding the galaxy of the fate that awaited those who defied them. The phrase final contact began to circulate in whispers, first as a joke, then as a grim acknowledgement. Humanity no longer did first contact with new species. They did final contact. And everyone understood what that meant. Yet even in triumph there was unease. The veterans of Croth Prime walked the streets of Earth with eyes hollowed by what they had seen. Their metals shone bright, but their minds carried the weight of slaughter. Families embraced them as heroes, but at night they woke in screams, remembering the alien children who had cowered before their rifles. Some tried to laugh it away, leaning into the dark humor that had always been humanity's shield. They told jokes about extermination, about toasters and bread, about alien worlds being nothing more than breakfast. Crowds laughed. But beneath the laughter, there was silence that no joke could fill. The council ordered the construction of a vast monument on Earth, a memorial to the scouts who had been tortured and killed at the beginning of the war. The site became a pilgrimage ground. Families left flowers, holograms flickered with names of the fallen, and recordings of the scouts' final transmissions played in a loop. It was meant as closure, but it also served as justification. Their voices, broken with pain, reminded humanity why they had chosen vengeance. Children were brought to the site to learn the story of the war, to understand that humanity had once been prey and had vowed never to be again. For some, it inspired pride. For others, it was a wound that would never heal. The galaxy itself adapted quickly. Trade flowed more freely than ever, with alien merchants eager to keep humanity satisfied. Borders that had once been contested now opened wide, and Earth's fleets patrolled them with ease. Even crime syndicates and pirate clans who had terrorized the stars for centuries went silent, unwilling to provoke the wrath of the species that had burned Croth Prime into dust. Fear had done what no diplomacy ever could. Humanity was no longer just another civilization. They were the apex predator of the stars. And yet, with that fear came isolation. Behind closed doors, alien leaders spoke of humans not as allies, but as a storm. Some called them liberators, others called them butchers. Whispers grew of resistance movements forming in the shadows, not yet daring to strike, but already dreaming of vengeance. Humanity had secured peace through terror, but peace built on terror was fragile. It held only as long as the fear did. The council knew this, but they also knew there was no turning back. Once extinction had been declared and carried out, the path to mercy was gone forever. Within humanity itself, divisions grew quieter but sharper. Some politicians argued that Earth must now take responsibility, to lead the galaxy toward stability and prosperity. Others insisted they must remain vigilant, always ready for the next war, for another species daring to test their strength. The soldiers leaned toward the latter. The scientists dreamed of the former. Civilians lived in the tension between the two, uncertain whether to see themselves as guardians or conquerors. It was in this fragile moment that something unexpected occurred. A listening post far beyond the edge of charted space intercepted a signal. It was faint, distorted, almost lost in the cosmic background noise. But it was not Croth. The transmission carried patterns unlike anything recorded before, rhythms that suggested intelligence, technology, and perhaps malice. Analysts replayed it endlessly, debating whether it was a cry for help, a challenge, or something far stranger. The council kept the discovery secret at first, not wishing to shake the fragile calm that had settled after the war. But secrets never lasted long in a world connected by billions of channels. Soon whispers spread. Something else was out there. Something that had watched, perhaps even waited. For ordinary people, the rumors became fuel for dark humor. Comedians joked about aliens taking a number to stand in line for extinction. Memes spread with captions like Earth Customer Service, now open for extermination requests. People laughed, but beneath the jokes was an unease they could not shake. The Croth had been brutal, yes, but they had also been arrogant, predictable, and overconfident. Whatever else lay in the darkness of the galaxy might not make the same mistake. Humanity had revealed its strength, but it had also revealed its existence. The stars were watching. The council met again, the same chamber where they had once debated retaliation or eradication. This time, the president's words were measured but resolute. We have shown the galaxy who we are. We cannot hide again, and we will not cower. If others come for us, they will find us ready. His voice carried across every world, every colony, every settlement. Humanity, he declared, would remain united, vigilant, and unyielding. There was applause, there were cheers, but there was also silence, the silence of those who knew the cost of such readiness. As the years passed, the War of Extinction became legend. Children grew up repeating the story of the tortured scouts, the Battle of Trinax, the sacrifice in the nebula, and the firestorm of Ragnarok. For them, it was history, a story of triumph. For the veterans, it was memory, heavy and painful. For the galaxy, it was a warning carved into the stars. And somewhere, beyond the reach of human ships, the faint signal continued to whisper, patient, watching, waiting. On Earth, beneath the towering memorial to the scouts, an old general walked in silence. He looked up at the names etched in light, remembering the screams that had started it all. He whispered to himself, "We won." But his voice cracked, and the next words were heavy with doubt. At what cost? He turned away, the monument glowing behind him, the galaxy stretched out before him, vast and full of shadows yet to come.